Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com. Welcome to the reprehensibles, to the unauthorized, to the VFM, to the Dread Ilk, to the Arkhaven backers, you know who you are, and a warm welcome to the Bears. So I am excited. I'm excited about an initial public offering. And that's not something that you hear me say very often, because I regard the stock market as a casino. And while I was planning to talk about the littlest chicken hawk, Ben Shapiro's utter humiliation on the BBC, I'm not going to talk about that tonight because I want to dedicate the entire Darkstream to it. And I don't think that we can do that tonight because I'm simply too excited about something else. Why is that? What is that? Well, part of it is because I am working on about, 3 hours of sleep last night. So it was necessary to, it's necessary to just kind of roll with it. But the reason that I am stoked about this Uber IPO has literally nothing to do with Uber. It has nothing to do with its performance. It has nothing to do with the fact that the price actually went down after the IPO. I've never actually used Uber ever. I've never even ridden in an Uber that someone else got for me. So why am I so excited about it? Well, the reason I'm so excited about it is because when you do an IPO, you are required to release a lot of financial information that a private company doesn't have to. So, what's out there? What got revealed? And what got revealed is the fact that someone else anticipated me. I am not quite the original thinker that I would like to consider myself to be. The great thoughts I had were thought before, and I'm not the groundbreaker. Some lawyers out of, I don't even know where they are. Some lawyers are. The key thing is we are currently engaged, we being Arkhaven and Arkhaven's backers, are currently engaged in a legal dispute. And it's a legal dispute that forced us into arbitration, actually forced us into a specific arbitration system. And so I looked at all the rules. Here we go. Looks like we're getting dropped frames again, which, by the way, is not. It's not on our side. So anyhow, but hopefully we'll be able to keep moving along. Anyhow, the important thing is that I'm not the first person to discover this. I am the fifth person to figure this out. And what's so great about that is that Uber and what was it? Chipotle and some company about buffalo wings and Lyft have all been subjected to the same strategy, and they have all completely failed to find their way around it. And so this is really good news because it confirms what I thought, and it means that we are probably going to be able to bring this whole thing to a close sooner rather than later. Because if they don't, they will not be in business. So, so I'm very excited about that. Because, frankly, I don't really want to spend the next 2 years dealing with this totally unnecessary nonsense, especially when the end result is guaranteed. And so, and the other thing that's exciting about this is that this is a way out of a lot of this social media nonsense, a lot of this censorship nonsense, because a lot of these companies that are engaging these practices, like WordPress, is that they require this arbitration stuff. What happened? Let me give you a little of the history. The reason that arbitration became so popular, and the reason that so many of these companies force the users and force the employees into arbitration, is because they want to avoid class actions. Class actions can be very expensive. They're very unpredictable. And if a company gets beat in a class action, it is, it's incredibly expensive for them. So what they did is they adopted these mandatory arbitration clauses. And the mandatory arbitration clauses are written into the terms of use of companies like Indiegogo, companies like Amazon, companies like PayPal, companies like WordPress. Not all companies do it. For example, YouTube does not. Google does not. And so these companies switch to using arbitration, mandatory arbitration clauses, in order to avoid the costs of actual lawsuits. But what's interesting is that the way that the arbitration, the other side has to pay everything. So what's interesting is that the companies have been trying to argue that they can keep people from going to court, but that they don't have to pay for the arbitration because they piss so many people off that that the cost of doing the arbitration becomes virtually impossible for the average company. Let me give you an example. Uber had 12,500 people register arbitrations with them. So the cost just of the filing fees alone for Uber was the cost of the filing fees alone would have been $34.3 million. $34.3 million just to pay the filing fees. The funny thing is that they paid 296 of them, which was 370,000, before they realized that, oh, wait a minute, we can't do this and stay in business. And so that's why they ended up settling with all these 12,500 drivers, paying $150 million, because the alternative was that they were going to have to pay at least an absolute minimum of $340 million. And so it's really kind of beautiful the way that these corporations are being hoisted on their own petard, because they didn't switch to the arbitrations out of the goodness of their heart. They switched because they thought it would be a good way to avoid lawsuits, avoid being held accountable for their actions. And now they're finding out that in attempting to prevent consumers and to prevent employees from seeking justice, they're actually far more vulnerable as long as people are willing to pay a little bit and as long as they're willing to get organized. My books are not translated into German or Ukrainian for the most part. I think one of my novels is translated into it. And so is there a business opportunity to organize pools of arbitration claimants? There probably is, but you need to be careful because although it's legal to fund someone else's legal disputes, whether it's a lawsuit or arbitration, it is not legal to do so for the purposes of harassment. So it's a little bit of a gray area, and I would stay away from that. I mean, trust me, the thought occurred to me, but it's not a good idea. Whistleboy, first of all, you should be able to see that I'm not a boomer. And secondly, I guarantee you that I am less fond of boomers than you are. In fact, all you need to do is go to my blog and click on the baby boomers link, and you can see all my blog posts about boomers. But yeah, what this means is that Silicon Valley and big social is considerably more vulnerable than they'd ever realized. And so you need to, if you're having trouble with one of these social media companies, what you need to do is get together with other people who are having the same problem and then do something about it. It'll cost you $250. That's about it. And it's a way of holding these out of control corporations accountable. And what we've seen now, what we've seen now from Chipotle and what we've seen now from Uber is that they have tried everything. They've tried just flat out not paying the arbitration fees to try to prevent the process from getting started. And they got absolutely hammered for that by the U.S. District Court judge. And so, what we're talking about here is banding together and allowing people to band together and work together to prevent social media from utilizing their power against individuals in an abusive manner. And so, I would strongly recommend if you're going to get banned, if you get banned, if you get mistreated, all this sort of thing, get together with people get together and so Spinch says, what in your opinion would be a great book to read as someone who is interested in developing their rhetorical skills? Honestly, I mean, not to blow my own horn here, but I would recommend SJW's Always Lie over Aristotle's Rhetoric, because SJW's Always Lie, the chapter 10 specifically, is essentially a dumbed down version of a summary of Aristotle's Rhetoric. I have not heard of Josh Hu TV. Someone said, what's with all the boomer hate? The boomer hate is because I'm Gen X, and I have had to listen to boomers go on and on and on and on about themselves for literally my entire life. I'm not interested in hearing explanations for the 573rd time how they changed the world. To the extent they changed the world, I think they made it a worse place. You know, we used to joke that, 40 is the new 30 was one day going to be, 70 is the new 50. That was a Gen X joke. And then the boomers actually did it. Still sexy at 80. It's like, no, you're really not. Why did the boomers turn out so bad? Because their parents were determined to give them a better life than they had, and they were not sufficiently well disciplined, and there were too many of them at a time when the mass media began marketing to them. So basically, they were collectively given an inflated sense of their own importance. Now, obviously, we're talking about tens of millions of people. There are exceptions. Obviously, when you're talking in generalities, when you're talking about generations of people, you're going to have tens of thousands, maybe even millions of exceptions. But we're talking about the general description, the general stereotype that is based in the reality of boomer behavior. Not every Gen Xer is, apathetic and cynical and, all that sort of stuff that they used to call us. But it is much more true of us collectively than of the generations that preceded or followed us. So, Tobias says, so corporate cancer sooner than 2020? We'll have to see. We don't know. But, it's really remarkable to see what a number the boomers did on Generation X. When you look at how few kids I knew were divorced or were the products of divorced families when I was in grade school, there was literally one girl who finished school with one last name and came back the next year with a different last name. And it had to be explained to all of us that her parents had gotten divorced, and none of us knew what it was. We were in maybe third grade. And it was crazy because by the time I graduated from high school, suddenly there were more and more children whose parents were divorced. And by the time I graduated from college, there were an amazing number of divorces. And my parents actually ended up getting divorced about 10 years ago. It's just crazy. And the funny thing is that of all the people my age that I know, I can think of two divorces, but there's only one divorce among the people of my age, and they got divorced 2 months after they got married. It was a really bad idea. Everybody knew at the time it was a horrible idea, so it was good that it ended very quickly. But the other two divorces I was thinking of are actually my younger brother's age. And so it's interesting to see how the Gen Xers seem to be much more serious about marriage. Although I have to say, it's also true that they're less likely to be married. I know a lot more women who never got married than I would have expected. So, Wouldn't it be funny if I just started speaking Navajo to you? Um, that would be amusing. Um, yeah, Ronald Reagan has a lot to answer for. Um, he's a conservative saint, which is kind of fitting because conservatism has conserved nothing. And if you look at what Reagan did, and then he signed the 1986 Immigration Act, which was a complete disaster. So, I probably wouldn't eat at least 35% of the things that Owen would say to eat. So, what I was saying about Reagan. What I said about Reagan is that he had 3 major accomplishments and 2 were negative. No, Whistleboy, my internet. This is funny. I'm going to school this guy. Whistleboy, for a Gen Xer, his internet connection is really bad. My internet connection is perfect. Why are you dumb enough to think that the problem is with my internet connection? I even went and tested it to make sure it was good. This is not on my end that it's taking place. This is Google. This is YouTube. And so, if this keeps happening, then I'm just going to switch over to doing all my streams on unauthorized. Owen is we're both looking at doing that, and so what we may switch we may dual stream, or we may just switch things around and live stream from unauthorized, and then upload the videos to YouTube. I don't know. We'll have to see how it works. Matthew Milam says, reminds me of the stream he did where he talked about software never working. It is astonishing. Nothing ever works anymore. It's absolutely incredible how bad the software has gotten. And so, also stop making comments about it being offline. It's not offline. It's just offline for you. So, it doesn't do me any good for you to fill up the chat with saying, I can't see anything. There's nothing I can do about it. Complain to YouTube, not to me. So, yeah, and so when you look at what's happening today, it's not just that things are not working. It's that the level of incompetence throughout is tremendous. Look at the whole thing we're talking about here with Uber. All of these companies paid lots of lawyers, lots of money to impose a system on people that guaranteed that if they pissed off enough people, they could be driven into bankruptcy. That's just insanely stupid. That's crazy stupid. And this is why nothing works anymore, because the average level of intelligence in the United States is about 10 points lower than it used to be. Diversity is absolutely destructive. Diversity ruins things. With a little more diversity, and we're going to lose indoor plumbing. If you're not sold on Western civilization and nationalism and Christianity, what you might be sold on is indoor plumbing, because that is a consequence of Christian nationalism and the European nations. That's a consequence of Western civilization. And if you spent enough time outside of Western civilization, you know that's true. G says, do you think the Bible gives a specific date to the second coming of Christ? Absolutely not. Could the date possibly be hidden away somewhere inside Revelations? Absolutely not. Jesus said, no man knows the hour, not even the Son. So when it was founded, therefore, America should no longer be considered America. Yes, that is fair. It's not the same country. A nation, only YouTubers I watch now. Thanks for all the content. Looking forward to the investment. Yeah, that's going great. We'll have more on that in the coming week. Dr. Azume says, thanks for the info I'm digesting. I have 2 questions. A couple of streams ago, you mentioned 2 books that were evidence of Jesus beyond the Bible. Could you please repeat those names again? It's Josephus and Tacitus. His second question is, do you have a recommended reading list? Yes, if you go to Castalia House Direct, you can see I've got recommended reading lists for science fiction, for fantasy, for history, for literature. Check it out. You can even order the books directly through that if you like. Charles Carlson says, haven't been able to catch one live for a while, so have a super chat. Thanks, Charles. Alexander says, are lambdas categorically homosexual? Yes, that's literally the category they represent. Jimmy W., who is not Jimmy Wells, says, sir, do you know of the Japanese mill sci-fi Legend of the Galactic Heroes? I do not. What do you think about on tactical and strategic levels? Nothing, because I'm not familiar with it, although it does, I have to say, sound interesting because I like mill SF and I also like Japanese literature. I'm a fan of both Mishima and Murakami, and of course Murasaki Shikibu. Crash Hard throws in 20. Starliner sends some sort of ASCII emoji that I don't understand. Oh, it's a Christian fish. I feel so with it. I actually figured out one of those things. We already addressed the unwisdom of eating plutonium. Crash Hard wants to know how far in the future is an unauthorized app. I have no idea, but the sooner I can do it, the better. We answered, no, the Bible does not give a specific date to the second coming of Christ. Faith and Reason, thank you, Vox. Thank you, Dimitri. And Cameo Bear makes a cameo to throw in $1. Thank you. How many of Thomas Jefferson's posterity are part of the American nation? No idea. Considered to be proper Western civilization. Will there be any further development of this? Working is how everything is going to go across the West, and there we go again. So,